Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes. My name's Tim.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
This is Adam.
And today we're going to be giving our hot take review on the game we just finished playing, Arcs. And this is a unique review because we actually did a full feature review of Arcs way back in episode 95, a little over 2 years ago. That was June of 2022. So here we are doing it again. Why is that? Because that was a prototype version we played at the time when it was on Kickstarter. Now we've had a chance to play the full version. And so we're going to be talking a lot about that tonight. But before we talk about that, as always, I do have some poll results to discuss. And we'll talk about that first and then get into the game. So my question this week was, when you travel on vacation or holiday, approximately how many board games do you usually bring with you? The options I gave, number one was none. I need a break from my hobbies. And that got an answer of 7%. Less than 5, I'm hoping to sneak a few plays in, got 68%. 6 to 10, I'm definitely getting some games played, was 25%. And more than 10, my vacations are all about gaming, was 0%. I asked these questions out on Facebook, on Blue Sky, and on our Patreon group. And we'll get to some of our listeners' answers. But how did you guys answer this question?
I didn't see the poll question at all, so this is the first that I'm hearing about it. But I could never answer a question directly. I have to add caveats, like how far are we traveling? Because when we went to Fiji last year, we brought 3 or 4 games because they were small and we could get them in. At least, I don't know. So I would say my sweet spot feels like 5 or something because I want to make sure that there's enough variety for whoever we might encounter so we can get something played.
That's a good answer. I think, well, this is appropriate. We're about to go on a little road trip vacation here. So I think I'm going to bring Battle for Rokugan. We're going to end up the end of the trip. There's going to be a bunch of people there. And I think that's a good game for, it's approachable. So there's like light rules and I think I could teach it and get that going pretty quick. So it depends on the group that's going to be there too. But, and then like a couple, 2-player games. Azul is fantastic to take on the road. That's what Chris says he always likes to take with him. Then I have that little Liberation game, one of those little pocket games, like the 19 card. I forget that publishing company. You know what I'm talking about?
Button Shy.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
So I have Liberation. It's like they say it's like a Star Wars Rebellion tiny style. That's just in my travel bag. So that goes with me everywhere. Even I never play it, but I have it with me just in case I get super bored. And then a deck of cards is always fantastic for going on the road. So you can take, what is a deck of cards? That's like 1,000 games right there. So that's kind of a cheat. I don't know. What about you, Tim?
Well, first I have to, applaud you for trying to bring Battle for Rokugan to play with your kids, like parents, on this trip that you're doing with them. If you get that played, I'm really excited to hear about it. That'd be amazing.
It's not going to
actually get a few people pulled into that. And second, Sarah, I loved your humble brag about, that time we went to Fiji, no big deal. The one thing that I actually went to Fiji as well, and I remember we were scuba
humble
diving.
Brag back. Okay.
We were scuba diving at the time, and we were trying to bring our own regulators and stuff because we didn't want to deal with rental gear. And they were very strict about the amount of weight you could carry on the planes because you would, you'd fly to like the main island, but then there are all these little islands. You got to get in this little tiny plane, and everybody's got to weigh themselves with their luggage and their gear and stuff like that. So was that one of your concerns? Was the weight, or was it just more about packing for a long trip?
Well, we were flying standby. So it was, what can we fit in an overhead?
Oh, definitely.
So like that was
then.
really
Okay.
limiting. So we have a little travel Azul, so that made that easy. But yeah, that's really the consideration is space, because everything, including our clothing, we have to pack that too, needs to fit overhead.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Makes sense. By the way, if anyone is listening to Sarah for the first time here, you don't know who she is. Sarah's Adam's partner. This is her second appearance on our show. She's officially a guest at this point, like a co-host tonight for sure. So welcome, Sarah. Thanks for joining us again. Sarah and I have been playing games with Adam since they met, basically. So I've known Sarah for several years now. And she's had a chance to play Arcs with us many times this last week. So we're excited to talk about that. But let's finish up with what some of our listeners had to say about this question. So over on Patreon, Marco answered the question, what a coincidence. Tomorrow I'm leaving for a 15-day vacation, and we chose not to bring any games. We need a full break from gaming and technology. And I'm only bringing 2 books with me. That's cool. I mean, I don't know why you do that to yourself, but it's good to get a break, a little change of scenery once in a while. Ben Davies said, right now I'm on a 4-night work trip. I brought a full suitcase of games, and I've played too. That's probably pretty typical. Blue Sky, Mark Johnson said, unless it's an extended family event like Thanksgiving, I just bring a couple party games and or 2-player games, though I often also bring a solo game, much like the book I'll take with me. That's relaxation. And then Joe said, always have to bring a few solo games for if I get bored or have to get out of the sun. Then a few games that play good at 2 if it rains and we have to have an indoor play. So I guess Blue Sky's our solo player group there. Everyone was talking about solo plays. Over on Facebook, Christopher Carter said, I always take 6 to 10. We typically play 1. Adam, I don't think I answered the question myself. Yeah, I usually pack like 5 on a vacation, and maybe we get 1 game playing, which is so crazy because in a typical week, my wife and I will at least play a few games together. But it just always feels like, you're exploring. It's a different environment, so we never get as much play as I'm hoping. And then Ray Myers said, my feelings. If you're completely okay with no games you bring being played, bring as many as you like. Just don't set yourself up for disappointment. So that's a good philosophy. Bring as many as you like, but don't plan on playing any games. Just pack them, bring them along for the ride. Have you guys find that you get wear and tear on your boxes? Like I used to travel for work every month, and I'd bring a game to play solo, typically in my hotel room, like even if it's a bigger game. But I'd also bring games and try to get my coworkers to play them with me. And I damaged so many game boxes by just having them in my luggage back and forth over and over again. Has that ever happened to you guys?
I don't think so. I think the wear and tear usually happens at home, and that just makes it easier to take it along.
So far, no damage. Knock on wood. I pack them. I stuff them with my socks. My shirts are all wrapped around them. Probably other stuff you guys don't want to know about is like packed in. Keeping those boxes nice.
All your
and
underwear
safe.
is all
yeah, exactly. Trying to keep them all from getting damaged and stuff. So I try to wrap them in the coziest little sweatshirts and whatever else I have available that I'm taking with me. So I try to take good care. It's worked out so far.
I try too. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. But
yeah.
All right. Well, that'll wrap up that poll question. I did want to give a quick shout out over on Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/boardgamehottakes. We love your support out there. It really is helping us make the show. As you can see, since we've had a Patreon, we've started doing video. We're bringing guests in. I mean, it's like look at the production changes that have happened since we've had a Patreon. But we are also giving away a board game monthly on our Patreon. The main reason why we did this is because we would like to start getting review copies from publishers or asking for them a little bit more. And the reason to do this, of course, is that you get to hear about some of the latest games sooner than we would normally. But in the past, we've been reticent to ask for review copies because we don't want to be influenced. We don't want to feel like they're giving us something, so we have to say something nice about their game. So our fix for that was to say that anything we get from a publisher going forward, we're going to give away to our Patreon supporters. This month, we gave away Alexander Hamilton is one of our friend of the show lover supporters, and we drew him. This is not the guy that
very important political figure in the history of the United States.
Yeah. But anyway, great name, Alexander. But Alexander won Cora Quest. When we drew his name, we actually gave him an offer of 10 different games to pick from, and he chose Cora Quest to play with his family. So congrats, Alexander. We really hope you enjoy the game that went out in the mail to him today. We will be drawing another game at the end of the month. So more news coming on that, but please join us on Patreon. We have a lot of great conversations, a lot of exclusive content out there, and we're giving away board games. With all that said, let's jump into a description of ARCs. In ARCs, you play as a galactic society trying to spread out and gain the most power in the galaxy. Each player starts with a handful of randomly dealt action cards and control of 2 planets, a city, a spaceport, and a handful of ships spread across the map, which consists of a bunch of interconnected planets and regions. The leading player in each turn will play one of the action cards from their hand, which will show the suit and strength of the card, and will list how many and which types of actions can be taken with that suit. After they've taken all of the actions allowed, the next player can either follow with a higher strength card in that suit and get the printed number of actions, or they can pivot and play a different suit, which will allow them to take just one action printed on that card, or they can follow and take just one action printed on the lead card. Not unlike a trick-taking game, the player who played the highest strength card in the leading suit will lead the next turn, but that's about where the trick-taking feel of it ends. Some example of these suits is Aggression, which allows players to move, battle, or secure court cards, and the Construction suit, which allows players to build or repair ships or buildings. Court cards are the way that players will gain some asymmetric abilities during the course of the game. They're gained if a player has first placed their agents on them using an influence action or one of the action cards, And then the secure action, they'll gain control of that card and place it in front of them, getting the ongoing effects if they had the most agents on the card when they secured it. I'm not going to go into detail on all the rest of the actions you can take, which generally follow standard 4X style gameplay types of actions. In order to gain power, which is essentially victory points, a leading player must declare an ambition, which essentially identifies one of the conditions that will be scored at the end of the round. But any players who lead in that condition at the end of that round will earn the power. So you have to be careful before you declare an ambition that you think you can still hold the lead for the rest of the round. The game ends when players reach a certain amount of power based on player count or at the end of 5 rounds. Arcs was designed by Cole Worley with art by Kyle Farrell. Arcs was designed by Cole Worley with art by Kyle Farron and was published by Leader Games. So let's jump into the gameplay and mechanism of Arcs. I'll lead on this one. As I mentioned, we did talk about this. Adam and I did a review of this 2 years ago. Chris wasn't with us there either. He's not with us here tonight. Chris apparently doesn't like Arcs very much. But Adam and I liked it so much that we both backed the Kickstarter. And so we have gotten our copies in. Mine is sitting at home in its box still. I haven't opened, but I got a chance to play with Adam 3 times this week. I think Adam and Sarah got a 4th play in. So this is a unique review, not only that we've actually featured this game on our show before, but also that we got 3 to 4 plays in the week that we're doing the review. Not a typical hot take review. And it was a pretty interesting one because I think there was a lot of surprises this week as we went through each gameplay and kind of discovered new things and figured it out. So I think it was a really cool way to experience this game before we talk about it. I'll jump in with the first point of the gameplay, and that is that Adam and Sarah have a really excitable kid in their background right now. And so we're going to hear that a little bit on the video. Don't worry about it. You can just ignore it. The most interesting thing, of course, of the gameplay here is that they try to take kind of that trick-taking mechanism of, one person plays a card, the next person follows, or plays a higher power card or plays a different card or whatever, and so it kind of uses that to do action selection. But I think it's really neat here because it doesn't really feel just like trick-taking, even though it kind of plays as simply as that. It does feel like a really interesting way to take action selection. And I liked it. I think that's one of the things that I loved about the game back when it was a prototype, and I'm still really enjoying that piece of the game, that restriction, the kind of, the variation that can come from the different choices you can make based on what cards somebody else played and what cards you can follow with.
Yeah, so with the card play, that was definitely an interesting thing to keep track of, trying to keep track of the different suits as they were being laid down, and the pivot and copy actions. That was throwing me off a little bit. I was confused my first couple of times playing, thinking that I had to beat the second card that was also played if it was same suit. And so once I caught on that I could still play that and use one of the actions from that card, that opened up a few more choices for me. So it was a little bit to catch on to if you're not used to that type of trick taking, because it was a little bit different than the trick taking games that Adam and I have played before. But I liked it once I kind of caught on how to manipulate it and how to play the extra card to secure the initiative. So, yeah.
So yeah, it's weird, right? It's not really like trick taking. It's almost a distant relative of trick taking. There is that little bit of trick taking element, but like you talked about, Sarah, what you can do is if the card led, the suit that's led, they can. So there's so much that's going on with this initiative and the whole card playing aspect. So the suit that's led, each number, regardless of suit, has an ambition that you can declare with that. We haven't even talked about yet. That's part of this whole thing too. So the ambition is this little icon at the bottom of the card, and that's what's going to be worth points that round if you decide to declare it. And those points are increasing as the rounds, or they're called chapters here, as those rounds go on. So say Tim leads with this, attack suit, or what's it called? Hostile, is it aggression?
Aggression,
I think.
yeah.
Aggression suit. So if he plays like a 2 of aggression, then he can declare that the fuel barrels and material squares are going to be the the thing that are going to get you the most, the points that round. And he'll take a little ambition marker and then put the points in that little slot. And then Sarah, if she's going next, can play a higher aggression card. Well, first of all, that if he does declare an ambition, that card becomes worth 0. So any other card of that suit is going to be higher, and that's a potential to take the lead for the next round, which is important because then you can declare what you want to be worth points for the rest of that round. So that's a whole interesting dynamic right there. We're just talking about the card player. We're not even talking about anything else. And then whoever's going next can, either play 2 cards to take that initiative away or play another higher card of the same suit. So it's so many ideas, so many decisions are just being made with that first play of cards at the beginning of each round. That's before you're manipulating any pieces on the board or sliding this thing over here or doing this or doing that. So just that hand management, looking at your deck of cards, playing off of what Tim and Sarah and the previous players played before you, there's an astounding amount of decisions going into that.
Yeah, the promise of the game is that sorry, Sarah, I'll let you get in on this a second. The promise of the game is that this is supposed to be kind of, you're doing trick taking, right? And it leads to a 4X game. So, and it seems like it should be really simple and straightforward, but because of those, there is a lot of decisions, and because of all the choices you can make on the cards and all the alternatives you can do instead of just following suit, of playing a different suit and getting one action and choosing whether you want to, really take the initiative. That led to much thinkier decisions than I expected, much thinkier decisions than I remembered in our first prototype play. So I don't remember how much that changed. And I think, unfortunately, led to much longer downtime in the game. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. What I do want to pivot to, though, is what I'm pivoting here.
You're taking the initiative.
Are you securing? Yeah.
What I did want to pivot to really quickly, and then Sarah, you can run with it, talk about everything you want to. Adam talked about the ambitions. So the ambitions, essentially, and there's a lot of terminology. This is a typical Cole Worley design where he tries to get thematic with the descriptions, got abstract with other things for some reason, but really thematic with the terminology. And so you're declaring an ambition, which basically means you're saying, this is how I think I can gain points this round. And it's a really interesting system, probably one of the coolest things that this game does. And that in the first round of the game, there's 3 different ambition markers or scoring markers. And the first one's worth like 5 points if you take first place and 3 if you take second. And then there's like a 3 and 1, and then there's like a 2 and 0. And so 3 ambitions can be declared in the first round of the game. And that's the points you can get. And you can declare the same ambition on the same ambition twice or 3 times or whatever, depending on who picks them. And that is really fascinating because you can make choices early in the round to try to get that higher point ambition. And the problem is it sets everybody else up to know what they need to score points for that round. And that's been a really tricky part of this game because so many times I'm like, I'm going to do something clever. I've clearly got an ownership on this ambition. I'm going to declare it in the second. I'm going to take control initiative. I'm going to declare it and take control of it. And then all of a sudden, within a couple of rounds, everyone's taken that away from me. They've done everything they can. So this game, it's a really cool system, but it's very painful and swingy too, because like as soon as you know what you're going for scoring, that's whatever it goes for. And it changes things up a lot. It's been a very interesting system to navigate, trickier than I was expecting, more interesting in some ways, more frustrating in some ways. But yeah, really, really different part of this game for sure.
That's kind of adjacent to what I was going to jump in and say was I felt like I spent a lot of time thinking about which cards I was going to play on that first kind of and when you first, I can't remember which of you called it trick taking when we first sat down, and I kind of groaned because trick taking isn't I tend to overthink. It's not my strength in gaming. It's not my favorite type of gaming anyway. So I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was a trick taking game. I felt like I was tricked, but but I felt like I spent a lot of time thinking about which card I was going to lay based on whether or not I could play that ambition, if it was going to set me up to get any points, if it was too early to try to claim the ambition on that third game when we kind of figured out that claiming the ambition or declaring the ambition early was going to work against you, and then whether or not you wanted to play the face down card to secure the initiative and what that was going to sacrifice. And so just the level of decision making for that part felt like so much weight, and it's like really important, but it also, you could have a whole thing planned out, and then true to how trick taking games are, like whatever somebody lays can completely thwart everything that you've planned, and now you have to replan everything. And I felt that time ticking and the pressure of feeling like you're just taking too long because you have to keep redoing all of your planning, and one little thing can throw it all off with a card flip.
Did you really feel like you were taking too long, Sarah, though? Because it didn't seem to change your behavior.
Oh, well, yes and no. I felt like I was taking too long, but also I didn't care because I was trying to win.
Yeah, well, it worked well for you. It worked well for you.
I heard the sighs from the corner.
So, right, Tim, you mentioned swinging. There's a lot of swinginess in this game, and that's kind of typical of some cold world games. You have round to round, or turn to turn can change the whole board state and what you're thinking about. So that causes that downtime. You can have this plan, like I think Sarah was sort of alluding to. You have this plan that I know exactly what I'm going to do. Well, and then the person before you plays this card that steals this card from you and shifts this whole thing. Now your plan's out the window, and what card are you going to play next? I'll have to rethink my whole situation here because everything on the board has just changed, and now what's worth points has just changed. So that can induce this long think time, which I think both of you guys were talking about between turns, which I don't know. We played it, so with the three of us, that first game we played, we're just like, whatever, I'll just kind of shoot from the hip and play this card. And then the second game, we realized more what we were doing, and that kind of induced more downtime as we thought about, try to strategize, had a little sense of what we wanted to do, so we think about it more. And that second game that we played, it went long. It went really, really long.
We also corrected a rule that we had wrong from the first one, which in the first game where we thought we could catapult more freely, not being able to catapult so easily through the board created a lot more decision making too, because it was a lot harder to move around. So once you were moving, I don't know, I just felt like that was a much bigger decision point in which cards you were playing, and just the whole cascade effect of the movement being more restricted.
Yeah. Again, just these cards with different suits that just have a few actions on them seem like they should be easy to play, but every one of them had a lot of implications, and the game could change so drastically from any one thing you did or set yourself up for, or didn't cover yourself for. If you really want to plan it out, it's going to take a while to think through that. The one other mechanism I wanted to talk about here, jump into, is the court cards. And these are basically the way that your game gets asymmetric. This game there's an expansion for it that leads to a 3-game campaign, which I've read is the way Cole Worley wanted this game to be played. He wanted it to be an epic adventure played over 3 games. And so there's all these like branching story points and everything. We haven't done all that yet. We've only played what you get in this base box. And the base box, you don't really start with any asymmetry. It's not root. It's not like nobody has any different abilities when you start the game. But there are these court cards that you can get. And it's another way that like everything you do has implications, because in order to get, so there's always 4 of them out, and these court cards basically give you asymmetric abilities, or sometimes one-time effects are going to happen. And the way you get them is that one of the actions some of your suit cards are going to give you, your action cards, is this influence card. And to influence, you basically take these little figures you've got, these little meeples, and then you put them on the cards that represents how much influence you have there. But none of the cards let you both influence and secure the card at the same time. So when you influence, that means that the next person that takes an action, especially if they're following you and taking an influence, they can also put figures on the same cards you're influencing. And if they have the same or more influence than you do, you cannot ever get that card in the future. You can't secure it. So it's tricky as to when you actually want to even waste your action putting stuff out on those cards, because it may do nothing for you. And what's worse, it may actually help your opponents, because there's a number of actions that if they end up securing the card because they've got more figures, then they capture the cards, the figures you put on there, and that benefits towards one of the scoring ambitions. Or if they attack one of your cities and destroy it, and you've got figures on one of those cards, they get to just like capture your, kill your characters and keep them as bounty, which is another scoring condition, and then grab the card. So it's almost like a huge risk if you don't have yourself perfectly set up to grab one of those. But it's interesting because it gives you ways to get asymmetric abilities. So some really interesting play there, but also one of my biggest downsides of the game, I think, and that comes from the fact that these court cards are there's too much going on with them. They're too wordy. Like, you have 4 displayed, and that's partly what slows the whole game down. You have to read so much text and process so much text before you even make a choice of whether you want to, whether you want to try to go after one of those cards, or whether you care if somebody else gets them, or which ones you want to get. And then you've got people start to build them in front of them. And like one game, Sarah had 7 or 8 of those cards in front of her.
At least, maybe 10.
And there's no way we would ever know what she could even do in the game. We couldn't, right? I mean, I would literally have to go stand by her. Sarah didn't know what she could do in the game. I would have to go stand behind her and read all those cards. And then because they're so wordy and because they do several things, I have to reread it like several times. And that's just unfortunate because it's such a cool premise, the whole concept of how you get the cards and what they do and all of that stuff. But they're just a little too complicated to be fun and playable in a way, which is unfortunate. Will that change? I mean, I've now played 3 games in its current state, 2 games back in the prototype state, and I'm starting to get my head wrapped around a little bit what some of the cards do just at a glance. But there's still a lot of variety there, and a lot of words, and a lot of words you have to kind of, it's not just like obvious. Even if you know what the card does, I find myself having to check it again because there's like 15 words, which means that it could represent, it only happens in this one state, it only happens when, with this one type of planet, etc. So it's easy to mix them up. So I almost feel like those cards were just a little overcomplicated, and slightly damaged what would have been a really cool system otherwise.
Yeah, I would agree. I felt like too there was a lot of questions that I was having on the cards that you guys were going back to the rule book. I felt like every other turn of mine, because I'd be like, well, this is like, for me, maybe being more of a layman in the gaming world compared to you guys, it was just gray enough where it was hard to catch on, and there's so much terminology on the cards that it just felt like there was so much to keep track of. And when I was collecting all those cards, I was doing it for a different reason. I was doing it more to build toward the ambitions, because they had those ambition symbols, and I had abandoned the strategy of trying to build cities and be able to tax them and get resources for ambition that way. So I was more focused on just trying to keep track of what symbols I had up in the corner versus what the cards could actually do for me, because I just couldn't keep track of it all. I just knew I needed symbols to get points.
You guys are bringing up a lot of great points. And kind of the big picture here is everything is so interconnected with this game. This one action affects these 6 other actions that are going on. So the court cards, for instance, Tim, you talked about, they have this ability, this little 2 or 3 sentences of text on them that could be ongoing, or then they have this other section. Do you want to use it for the prelude? We haven't even talked about the prelude portion of this game. So between playing your card down and then doing the actions on that card, you can now use your resources that you have on your player board, or you can discard a lot of your court cards that you've gathered into your little tableau, and you can discard those and do whatever the prelude action is on those. You can do as many of those as you want before you do the actual action pips on your card. I don't think we've mentioned this, or maybe you mentioned in the rules description, Tim. On each card, there's 2 or 3 different actions that you can do per suit of cards. So an aggression card, for instance, has 3 different actions on it that you can do. So that's the one point I wanted to make there. I don't know if I even made a point.
About as much as you mentioned do, Adam.
I don't know. I usually don't have any points. That's correct. And then Sarah, you mentioned the legalese. There's if you are not used to playing the quantity of board games, and even if you are used to playing the quantity of board games, you brought up some amazing questions while you're playing this game, Sarah, and questions that I didn't know. So we went to the rulebook, and fortunately, I think the rulebook is pretty fantastic. There's some player aids that come with this, and that describe, have a very succinct version on 4 pages of a little player aid. And the rulebook was great too. There's a nice index on the back set. We were able to get to most of those questions pretty quickly. But yeah, there's a lot of this legalese. Well, when does that apply? Can I do this? Can I do that? We were able to find everything, but there's a lot of text, like you said, Tim, a lot of text, a lot of things to soak up. And you mentioned it, Tim, maybe 4 or 5 plays, a few of these cards, like, oh, I know what that one does. That one lets you, pick back up one of the played cards already. So you have an extra sort of action at the end of your turn. So if you play this game more and more and more, you get more familiar with those court cards. Maybe that's some of the stuff will be automatic. But right now, there's just a lot to soak up.
Well, since you mentioned the rule book, I'd like to lead that into the discussion on the production and the presentation here, the artwork. But do you guys have anything else you really want to cover on the gameplay before we move over to that?
Oh goodness. Well, yeah, I want to talk about the dice.
I know there's a lot.
Combat.
Okay,
there's a lot. We got to talk about the dice.
Okay.
The dice combat is pretty freaking cool. So I'm going to jump into that. I think I mentioned it on the, I don't know, when I was talking about arcs at some other point on the top 10 list. The dice combat is great. So there's the aggression card. You have to get in there. You have to move. You have to be able to attack. So you say you have 4 ships. You get to pick 4 dice from this dice pool. There's a basic one, hit or miss, 50-50 chance. There's the red one where you could get hit. And there's a circle icon on some of the dice where if the other player has fresh ships, undamaged ships, then they get to do a damage onto you per every undamaged ship they have, fresh ship that they have. So that's kind of crazy. And then there's the raid dice that have keys and destroy city icon, all these different icons. Whatever. The whole point is that the attacker just does one single roll of dice per attack that they're going to do. And that gives, a defense some chance to hit back. And then that lets them raid the city if they're able to raid the city with these keys or steal some stuff from you. So you get a lot out of one single dice roll, a super clean, very nice combat system, I think, here for arcs.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think it's really interesting. And what I found every time is that it was always interesting choices. And almost every time after I picked the dice and rolled them, I realized I made the wrong choice. So there's clear decisions here, with the one exception that what kind of lame person uses the blue dice? Those blue dice. You're just a chicken if you're using those.
Don't rip on the blue. Sometimes it's good to be cautious and safe. And I like doing that.
No, I probably should have used them more than I have. I've definitely messed myself up by going and attacking other people.
And before we go into production, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that it does feel like if you're actually gonna finally get to that point of doing battle, you just got to go all in, though. Like you can't just tiptoe into it. You just go.
I think the blue dice are okay. Is there a way to defend in this game? I would try to do it today against him. Like, how can I post up and play defense? I'm not sure there's a way.
Yeah, you got it. You just have to have undamaged ships in a region, because then all those circle icons hit back, and that's the main ways. You basically just have to accumulate forces around the things you're trying to protect. That's kind of the way to do it.
I know, but then if you just leave your, I don't know. I was trying to find a way to do that and then go get some points somewhere else, and then you have to. I don't know. It was tough.
That was kind of my strategy to defend against you, though, because the first couple of plays with you, I learned that you had a much stronger battle strategy than me. So that's why that third play, I just started throwing ships all over the board, and I was able to defend my city by just having more ships. So it was okay if I lost them because I could take the hits. But those
what
dice,
I found? Adam's only strategy is just to tell the other players what they should be doing that hurts their opponents and not him. It didn't work for him at all in a 2-player game, which was great because he couldn't talk someone else into attacking me. But that's Adam's typical strategy in most games.
Well, I told you exactly what to do to win I told you, Tim, you need to take this card from me to win the game. And you're like, that's right, I do need to take
Well,
that
I wouldn't have
from
known
you.
that because it was like 3 paragraphs of text on it. So there's no way I would have known that otherwise. But fair enough. Yes, you gave me the winning strategy against you.
But that was after you told me the winning strategy.
That's right.
We gave each other winning strategies back and forth.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into the presentation, the artwork and the production of this game. And Adam was talking about the rule book. I want to mention a couple of quick things. There's an amazing player aid that comes with this game. It's a 4-page. It's small, but it's 4 pages. You open it one, so it's like 2 double-sided pages, and it tells you everything you need to do about the different actions you can do, because you do need to reference them, right? Like there's a bunch of actions printed, but it's a really quick reference with exactly what the targets can be or what can you do with this or whatever, and it works great. There's a page for the combat that explains what the dice do, which is great because there's like an order you have to resolve it, and it's amazing. Almost everything you need in the entire rule book is printed on that 4 pages, and that's why it's so strange that this game has so much to talk about, because you basically can get the entire rule book on this like 2 double-sided pages. That said, the main rule book, where we did have to look up edge cases, wasn't the easiest. It's like we did eventually find everything we needed to know. And to be honest, to be frank, Sarah and Adam were kind of trying to be rules lawyers and trying to find the craziest defense when it was so obvious what the intent, what
trying
the
to
spirit,
get the rules right. Tim?
What the spirit of the game was. Every time I was like, guys, I think this is how it would go, and we'd go look it up for 5 minutes, and then it'd be like, yep, that's exactly how it goes.
But isn't it good to know for sure, Tim?
It is good to know for
be
sure.
Really sure.
It is good to know for sure. I mean, then you're not playing the game the wrong way.
You're not playing a rule wrong for 3 years.
Catapulting across the world or the universe.
But I would say that the main rule book, it was unfortunate that sometimes you'd go to look up a edge case and you'd look in the section where the rules should be, and it was either not there or it was like in one of these little black sidebars. So looking up those edge cases was trickier than it should have been. Otherwise, it was a really cool rule book. I like just, the way it's presented, everything about the rule book was great.
I don't have much to say about that because I did not
that's
peruse
fine,
it much myself. I just left it to you guys while I spent the time thinking about what I was going to do.
What else did you like about the presentation or the artwork of the game?
Does that include the ships?
Sure.
And the pieces? Yeah. Okay. Because it's that production and presentation.
It is. Yeah.
I liked the layout of the board. Overall, I guess it was pretty easy to figure out how to do the movement. I like the variability with the different cards, so that it was a little bit of a different game, a different setup every time. But I didn't like how wobbly the ships were. It made it really easy to, you accidentally bump one and then, did that one have a hit or not? And hopefully everybody was accurate and honest in whether or not it was a hit ship or not. But and I think having the different color dice was kind of nice and fun for battle. I know I'm taking it back a step, but I will say I have a love-hate strategy with rolling dice as battle. Maybe I was brought up on Dune, so it's a little too much randomality.
You're speaking Tim's language. He's so happy right now.
I want more control. When I decide to battle, like, I need to know that I can have more control on what's going to happen.
Tim is so freaking happy right now.
Don't ever play Eclipse with that.
That's a good warning because I was just seething sometimes.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Arcs is less painful than Eclipse when it comes to dice rolling.
Really? Oh man, that's good to know because that was on my list.
You guys are so scared of probabilities, and all you have to do is play the probability. That's all you got to do. Think ahead a little bit about your chances of winning, and then roll those dice.
We all didn't go to college for math, Adam. So.
Some of us did. Anyway, Sarah's talking about the miniatures expansion pack, or the little add-on you can get. The ships that come in the game are just wood pieces, sliced flat. So those will just lay flat, no issues whatsoever. But yeah, the miniatures, the plastic little guys, they are a little more shaky than the standard flat ones. So while they do look nice and they have this little wash that comes with them, yeah, they can flop over a little bit. Otherwise, I think the production presentation is cool. I love the palette here. The Kyle Farron artwork, I think, is really neat. A lot of his other work, Fort and Root, it's all right, but it's little woodland animals all the time in the forest and crazy colors that I don't know. It's all comes down to preference, right? I really think, again, let me get this giant box. Oh my gosh, look at this, suckers. So this is by the way, this is just the expansion box, the campaign, the Blighted Reach expansion. Look at that sucker. That's the size of, I don't know, I have a giant head, and this is the size of like 4 of my heads. Look at this thing. It's beautiful. I think the production and the art is beautiful. The aesthetic really, really appeals to me, and the presentation's great.
Yeah, I think the miniatures were an unfortunate miss, but again, if you're buying the retail game of this, which comes in a root size box, and there's a lot of game in that box, so don't hesitate to stick with that. It's great. But because we went on a Kickstarter and because we got suckered in and we went all in, Adam and I both got the miniatures pack, and it's pretty neat because you get to see Kyle Farron's artwork in sculpts. Yeah. And it's neat. It's right. It's unique figure types. It's unique ship types, but they definitely should have been a little bit more practical because the ships, it's so important that the ships are either upright or they're on their side. That's like a whole mechanism of the game. And the fact that the ships just tip so easily, it's definitely a bit of a miss there. Unfortunate. I'm not sure. I'll probably still play with them because I think they are really cool sculpts, but it's unfortunate that it's going to definitely lead to some questions once in a while. Like, wait a second, was that guy damaged or not? I don't know. But otherwise, yeah, the production's great. I really like Kyle Farron's artwork here. I think having these quirky sci-fi alien characters is a cool use of his funky style, and it is funky and it's fun and cool here. My last comment though on the production I want to mention, because when we played this game back in the prototype version, we played on a completely different looking map. It was more of a structured map with like, half a dozen planets around this galaxy with different routes to them and stuff like this. And I think what they try to do is make this as flexible as possible. And so they instead put this kind of circle in the middle, which is just nothing. It's just got the name of the game. And then around it are these planets. I think it's 9 or 10 or 12 planets or something like that. And then depending on your player count, you block off some region. So only certain planets are available. It's cool. It's beautiful. Its board is beautiful. I 100% will give you that. But it is so abstracted now that I never feel theme in that space adventure in a way that I do on other maps or in Eclipse or whatever. Like this one, it's always just this set of circles. And so I'm just moving ships around. The planets have different artwork, kind of abstract, kind of abstract Kyle Farron artwork. So you can tell that there's some differences to them, but they're mostly just kind of colorful blobs. And so I just never feel the theme of moving around space here because of the way the board was laid out. On the other hand, I don't know what the campaign does. Maybe there's some really good reasons to kind of, give that setup there. But as beautiful as it is, I think from giving me theme in my gameplay, I feel like it detracted a bit from the original version that we played. But it's a good looking game for sure. Aside from those couple minor complaints, it is an awesome production. I don't think you can complain about seeing this on the table.
Do you guys feel like you observed the artwork on the cards intentionally before playing or while you were waiting for me to take a turn? Because as you're talking about the artwork, I remember when we first sat down and kind of going, this artist looks kind of familiar. And I think I said, is this the Fort guy? But outside of that, I feel like I really didn't, and looking for the symbols on the cards for the ambition, I didn't look at the artwork at all because I feel like I was spending more time reading what I could do and just trying to keep track of everything that I didn't really have time to appreciate the art.
I'm with you, Sarah. I think the art is there on the cards, but I was still too busy trying to figure out what this card meant and what am I going to do on my turn? What does all this stuff mean? How can I actually use that? That's going to help me in some kind of way. So yeah, the art is there on the cards. With more and more plays, and maybe I'll be like, hey, did you notice this guy's like, look at his crazy teeth, or look at this guy's antennas, or, look at this funky dude over here. But right now,
I don't even remember there were aliens on the cards. I couldn't tell you what a single card looks like.
Maybe that's my real problem because I was totally looking at all the aliens, and maybe that's why I couldn't keep up with the paragraphs of text on the cards. Instead, I was just looking at the cool pictures because like there's one that looks like a sandworm from Doom, but he's wearing an actual like cloak on him and holding a ray gun. And yeah, I think the alien artwork is really cool here, and I definitely was drawn to it. Yeah.
And then as far as the board, Tim, I guess you need like some sort of Clemens Franz farm or something because this board is beautiful.
I know. I
Don't
said it's
listen to
beautiful.
Tim.
I didn't say it wasn't beautiful. I said it's abstracted, because what kind of galaxy has 9 planets in a circle and you are always just moving from one part of the circle? It's like you're looking at a pie instead of at a galaxy. That's what I'm saying. The galaxy is not perfect like that, right? Like it's not organized in that way, so it doesn't feel like a galaxy. Okay. Hey, it's my opinion. It's my opinion. It is beautiful, though. I'll give you that.
All right.
All right. Well, let me ask the final question, and that is, would you request to play ARCs again?
I'll go first. I would, but I feel like I only want to play it painfully for you with the 2 of you. And my reason being, I feel like it's going to take me about 10 plays to really learn the cards and learn everything enough to start to build that automatic strategy and not have to think every decision through so much. And I feel like if you bring new players into the fold continually, it's just going to add that timing of decision making to each play. And I feel like there's something there that I would enjoy, but so far I'm not getting like a really good feeling from it. I just feel like the potential is there, but I got to learn with people who are learning with me and kind of at that same level.
That's a good point, Sarah. I think I would request to play this one again, and I think I'm going to be playing it a lot more. I hope to be playing a lot more. Tim and I did the 2-person version tonight, and that felt a lot snappier. The decisions were a lot quicker, a lot less cards to play. And then, the whole initiative thing is quick. There isn't that, are you going to steal it right away? Are you going to play the lead suit? And then maybe that person will steal it, maybe not, for that if there's 3 people. So the 2-person game had a lot different dynamic. And I thought that was pretty fun. And that would go a lot quicker. And maybe, we threw, 3 or 4 more times if we played that, Sarah, then we'd have the cards down and be able to fire off some of these choices pretty quick. But I had a lot of fun with this. There's, I think the ambition selection thing is too cool to ignore. I want to play around with that some more. I don't have a good sense of how to defend and get points. That's why I've been successful in the first couple of plays. Yeah, beginner's luck is what I'm going to say with that. There's just tons to discover here. I think, especially with learning the cards. Well, I think I'm just repeating myself at this point. Yes, I'm going to request to play this one again. Having a lot of fun playing it. Despite its challenges of text and what does it mean and how am I going to do all this stuff and the downtime. I'm enjoying this one a lot.
Now, this is one of the trickier answers on this I've ever given. And, I've got the full, I backed this. I've got it from Kickstarter and it's sitting at home with me. And when I get a chance to play with Adam's copy, to be clear, right, if you don't know this, I'm living in a different place for a little while. So my home, when I say it's at home, I don't get to actually see my game for another 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. So Adam got his, and I was really excited. I was like, yes, Adam, let's get this played. Let's get together and get this played. And the first play of it, loved it. Everything. I mean, it's interesting choices. It's interesting action selection. There's a lot going on. It felt like a lot of discovery, and it was awesome. And I had a great time with it. And I was one of those rare situations where I was like, hey, the next game we played, let's play ARCs again. Let's do it again. I can't wait, right? So a week later, we played it again. And it still had a lot of that, but it also had so many ups and downs from turn to turn. Like the downtime was a bit long, and I was feeling it more, but I think because I wasn't just in that discovery mode, but it was also like, hey, I just did a clever thing. Oh, wait, that clever thing got completely taken away from me, and I got nothing, right? And I mean, just really painful moments in a way that I haven't felt in a game in as long as I can remember, where the game was literally made me feel awful about what happened that round. And then I also could see it happening to other people because I would make a clever move and take something and you could just, people are just like feeling miserable about what just happened to them in the game. I got to the end of that gameplay and I was like, oh man, I don't know about this game. But what did I ask to play tonight when Adam was going to come over and play a 2-player game with me? Let's play ARCs again. I never do that when there's a game I really don't like. So it's definitely got me intrigued. It's got me coming back to it. I did find the 2-player experience was more interesting and fun than I expected it to be. I usually wouldn't expect that in a kind of a big, battle or a 4X type of game like this. So I think there's game there. And I think I really want to try one of these campaigns at least. But here's my question, right? So I'm kind of on a fence on this game. I've got this whole Kickstarter edition out here. Everyone's raving about this game. It's popular, and you can't get it for several months until it goes to retail. Should I just sell it now? Because what if I don't like this game after a couple more plays? Or what if I, get home and I hold on to it and I'm so excited, but nobody, this is going to be a tricky game, I think, to get played. And there's only going to be certain groups that are really going to like it. And how many groups are you going to play it with that aren't just like, don't hate you after you got done playing it? So I don't know. This game is not as straightforward of a win as I thought it was going to be, especially after our first play last week. Last week I played it and I was like, this is one of my favorite games. And I definitely don't know if that's the case right now, but I also don't think I'm ready to let it go. So yes, I want to play it some more for sure. I just don't know if this is a game that's going to continue to, if it's ever going to make me happy, but is it going to keep bringing me back? I don't know about that. So tricky one for me. Very interesting game though, for sure. I think this is probably fits well with what a lot of what Cole Worley's done, in my opinion, which is make interesting games that lead to some bad moments. And he seems to like that. I usually don't. I'm still into it right now, but I'm not sure how well it's going to stick with me long term.
I agree with you on those painful moments. That's probably what was making. I don't know that I've played a game that has hurt me when something's been taken away the way that this game has. And I haven't played as many games as you have, or different variety, all of that. But there were some moments where, like I said, I was seething, and I am not a sore loser. I can handle it. I can appreciate a great move that somebody else makes, but I want to keep trying. So I'm hearing your 2-player response makes me want to give it a go a few times at 2-player and see how that feels.
And I think you have to be careful with this game. That's what I'm saying. Like, you want to be able to take something, but then how are you going to hold on to it? How are you going to defend all that stuff that you have? Because it can be snatched away so quickly. So maybe that's where the nuance is going to come out. And that's what I'm looking forward to, is the right time. When's going to be the right time to sort of seize this stuff and be able to maintain it going into getting some points. And I think, I don't think this guy Cole Worley, he knows what he's doing when he makes a game. And I think that's where the nuance is going to be on ARCs. At least that's where I hope it is.
All right. Well, that will wrap up the conversation on ARCs. We'll chat about just a couple of games that have been on our table right after this. All right. Welcome back. So this week, I had a chance to play one of the Spiel des Jahres nominees. I don't even know if the winners have been announced yet, so I could be way behind on this. But this was Captain Flip. This was a couple designers on this, but Paolo Mori is the designer I'm familiar with. And this is, the Spiel des Jahres is the German Game of the Year awards. It's one of the biggest board game awards that exist, but they tend to lean towards like family weight style games. And so a lot of the games on the list I don't get played, or they're not kind of really up my alley, but I did get a chance to play this, and it is very fun. I can say that. So the way Captain Flip works is basically everybody has a board that has something on it. The main player board is just a pirate ship, right? And so the pirate ship has 5 columns, and they're of different heights. One might be a column of 3 height, one might be 1, one might be 6, etc. And all you do on your turn is you grab a tile out of a bag, and each of the tiles have some different either immediate effects or scoring mechanisms. They're basically supposed to be crew for your ship. So maybe it's the gunner, or it's the swabby, or it's the parrot, or whatever. And you look at that and you decide if you want to play it on your player board, or you can flip it one time without knowing what's on the backside, and then take that side and then play it in your player board. And of course, there are some scoring, tiles that work better with other tiles, or maybe that they give you negative points if they're found with another tile. So it's always a bit of a risk if you're taking that flip, but it does lead to some fun choices. And as you place it in the columns, some of them will get benefits for being like in the same row with other tiles, or they'll be, for having one of each of these in a column, or they might be negatives for having a different type of tile in the same, row or column, or things like that. So there's decisions not only which tile you keep and whether you flip it, but it's also about where do you place it. And as simple as this game is, and as kind of silly as it seems to just take a tile and have to put it on your board, it was still really fun, and it still felt like fun choices. And I really like this. There are 4-player boards, and they have different, like there's the the ship is the main one, but then there's like an octopus that you can play on, and then there's like an island, and then some of them have different scoring mechanisms. Like if you fill up this whole column of different types of tiles, you'll get a bonus, or if you fill up this column with all the same type of tiles, you'll get a bonus, or if you're the first one to fill up this column, you get a bonus. So each of the maps adds a little bit of variety to the gameplay as well, and the way you're playing with the other players. And I think this game is very deserving of the Family Weight Game Award that it got. And if I see this around, I probably will pick it up, because I think this is a game that I'm excited to go back to. It's a great filler game, 15 minutes, easy to teach, and I think everybody's going to have a fun time playing it. So Captain Flip was a pretty big hit for me.
I just Googled the game, and it looks really cute. Like just when you said the name, I like the adorable, fun little quick games as much as I like a thinky game. So that looks like fun.
Yeah, and I think, this is a game that, honestly, you have a couple 9-year-olds in your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They could play this easily. You could teach this to them and they could play it, but also other adults would have a fun time playing this. So it's kind of one of those, sweet spot games like that.
That's great. This one looks great. Yeah, so colorful, beautiful. That the mechanism sounds fun and easy and fantastic. I think we need to get this one, Sarah. Looks fun.
Yeah.
Sarah, anything you've been playing lately?
I'm going to need your help to remind me of the name, but you and Danielle came over and you taught me a new game that I've been thinking about. And it's that
Architects of the West Kingdom.
That's it. Yeah.
Nice.
So we played Skyfall before that, which I had played before. Skyrise. Oops. James Bond is the other one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Close enough. But yeah, I really liked that game that we played 4-player, which I had only played 3-player before. So that was really fun, but it's a little bit heavier, and that was taking a little bit longer. And then we moved inside because it was getting a little hot, and we were playing Architects of the West Kingdom, right? Oh my gosh, that's a mouthful. I feel like that's the most complicated part of the game. And yeah, I thought Tim did a great job of quickly explaining the rules, and we were able to just kind of bang out a full game of it before you guys left. But I really enjoyed the quickness of it, especially after a different game that was fun, but was a much slower pace. I really liked how, and you and Danielle, you've got it down. So I'd lay a card and then boom, boom, boom. And it was my turn again. And I don't know. I liked the flow. I liked there was a lot of interesting decisions to make, but it's like the opposite of Arcs, where you didn't really have to overthink it too much. You could kind of build things, and there was ways that people could block you or throw you off course a little bit. But I don't know. It just had a nice flow, and I'd like to play that one again. Maybe if you guys come over soon.
Architects is one of the rare games that Tim has brought that's actually been enjoyable. So it's nice job finding that one, bringing that one. I love playing this game. It's on Board Game Arena, Sarah, and it works well on Board Game Arena as well. So yeah, great game, great teach. It was fun to go back. I think that's only played it a few times. I think it's my first time playing it actually in person. I only ever played it online before, and it works great online. Maybe better real time online than async, because it's a quick snappiness is what makes it so fun, I think.
That's great. I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, taught it, and I think we played it in an hour, maybe an hour and 15 with 4 people, one new person at the table. And that just goes to show how there's a decent amount to do, a decent amount of decisions, but it's not complicated. It's like you just teach what the worker placement choices are, and then you can just get in and start playing it. So great. Yeah. I'm glad you had fun with it, sir.
I didn't feel like an hour and 15 minutes at all, by the way.
Felt shorter?
It felt so quick.
Oh, okay.
That's what happens when you're having fun.
Yeah.
Unlike Arcs.
Wow. All right. Next up for me, Tim and I had Gest of Robin Hood on the table. Here it is. Here's the box. And alert, this is another GMT, a rare GMT sighting on the Board Game Hot Takes podcast / video podcast, whatever we're calling this. This one, like I said, is GMT Games, designed by Frederic Serval. And it's a 2-player game only. So I played it once with my dad, and I think I shorted him on the rules a little bit, hosed them a little bit. I was taking a little bit too much liberty with, I should have been restricting myself more than I was as the sheriff. Anyway, in this game, you're the sheriff of Nottingham, or you're Robin Hood, and it's a little bit of a tug of war. As the sheriff, you're trying to march things down this little track, which starts near the middle. You're trying to march it down towards the order side of the track. That's what you want as the sheriff. As a Robin Hood player, you're trying to march it up towards the justice side of the track. So that's kind of neat thematic thing right there. And it's basically, it doesn't have the little coin logo on the box. That's counterinsurgency, which is just this system of playing cards and taking the big move. And if you take the big move this time, then you're going to get a little weak move next time. But it's basically a 2-person coin game. So for the action selection, it's really neat. They have who's going to go first and who's going to go second. And that's kind of on the bottom in these 2 little squares. And you have 3 squares above that. You take a little weak action. You can take the event action, which is on the events on a deck of cards. That these, it's a card-driven game. These cards flip over every time. It has these different events. There's 2 events typically. One's good for the sheriff, and one's good for Robin Hood. And then you have the big action, the big exciting action over the right. So you get to do plots and deeds. So you have your player board in front of you. These plots are kind of these little actions that let you get some more guys out, or move them around, or sneak around in the forest, or recruit some henchmen if you're the sheriff, or tax the city, or put some little carriages out. I think that's a deed actually for the sheriff. So if you do a single plot, you do 1 of those. If you do the event, you do the thing on the card. If you do plots and deeds, you can do 3 of the plots as long as you have the cash for it. And you wanted the deeds on the bottom. So for the sheriff, maybe you're putting some carriages out, and there's a card flip. So you get to move those carriages towards Nottingham. You want to get those things home. And those carriages, when you put them out, it's like you're taking money or goods or whatever from the little city, the little parish that you're in. So they get outraged and they flip over to the rebellious side instead of the submissive side. So a lot of thematic things going on here. A little back and forth tug of war. And it was, once you got past all the text on this, there was only 1 player board full of text. And I guess there was a lot of cards full of text too, but just 1 card at a time instead of 4 when you're comparing that to ARCs. So once you got past all the text and sort of internalized the actions of this, I think we had this one flowing pretty good by the end of it, and a decent grasp of how to play this one. And I had a decent amount of fun playing a Gest of Robin Hood. I thought the production is nice. It's just the board is, kind of old-timey England, and this area of Nottingham, and you have this kind of central area with a nice layout on the side of Tug of War over here, a little Sherwood Forest in the middle, Nottingham, a big circle right in the middle, some little rivers running through stuff. It's a kind of delightful production, simple production. My dad, and when he saw I play this with my dad too, he said, "Where's the toys? I want the toys." It's just wooden, G&T wooden pieces.
You got him spoiled, Adam.
I know, Dad's spoiled. But you turn over, the Robin Hood guys have this one side that's like has a little picture on it, a little feather, or a little RH for Robin Hood. So that's on one's like the bottom of it. And then you flip that over and it's just blank on one side. So one side has the little icons on them and one side's blank. So that's like hidden or revealed. So you're kind of sneaking around as the Robin Hood character, trying to find him as the sheriff character, throw those guys in prison and make order in the forest. Or you're trying to rob from the rich as Robin Hood and bring everybody to justice. Tim beat me this one too. Just a night of Tim beating me up all over the place, but still had a lot of fun playing. Gest of Robin Hood, GMT Games, Frederick Serval. Nice job.
Yeah, surprisingly great production, in my opinion. It is, mostly cardboard and shits, but I thought the artwork on the board was great. I thought the artwork on the cards was really nice, really, kind of stylistic, old British, characters and things like that. I thought the production was really fun here. I've got a positive and a negative with the action selection here. The action selection was really cool that the first player to go gets to choose, either you get to take the action on the card, which was always interesting, and sometimes you would just want to take it so that the other person didn't get it, or you could take the big action, but the big actions cost a lot of money, so we couldn't do it all the time. And then the risk was that if you took the big action, then the other person's going to go first the next time. So even if they take you could just take a single action or the event card or the big action. If you just take a single small action, it sets you up to go first the next time. So you could even chain some little combos together, which was pretty cool. That was all great. Here's the problem with this game, in any asymmetric game like this. We were supposed to play with our player boards behind these screens so you could kind of hide what information was available to you. And everything I needed to know what Adam could even do in the game was behind this screen. And there's only 6 actions, I think, and 6 on mine. But even mine were wordy enough that I had to go and reread it every single time I wanted to take an action to make sure I understood what it did. Maybe I'm having a trouble with reading or something lately. I don't know.
It's comprehension.
Stop giving me paragraphs of text to read every time I want to make a choice in a game. But so I really didn't even know what Adam could do. I mean, he could have taught it to me, and maybe I would have internalized it with a half-hour teach. But instead he gave me a 10-minute teach, and we got it and we're playing, and I thought that was great. But I didn't have any idea what Adam could do, so I was kind of just trying to figure out what I could do. And then over the course of the game, I started to learn what some of his actions were. But I think it's pretty silly that this player board the screen you're playing behind has like the round actions, and it's got the details on every card that Adam's Robin Hood could go and rob from, but it didn't tell me what his actions were that he could take. And that was a bit of a it's like, let me know what the other person can do in the game, otherwise I'm going to be surprised and feel dumb or just angry that I didn't know you could do that simple thing that's completely changed my plans. That's my only complaint about the action selection. Otherwise it was fine. The other reason why I wouldn't go back to this game a lot is just because that tug of war, this happens in some 2-player games, and Adam mentioned Watergate after we get done playing. I think that's a great example where you're playing action cards, and you taking your turn can feel fun, the other person taking their turn can feel surprising or exciting or whatever, but ultimately you're just trying to pull this marker up and down a track, and it just feels like, okay, well, I can go one step this way, well, he's going to go one step backwards, and so it ultimately results in you just like trying to get a couple pulls on one turn or get set up for the end game, which is kind of how I won, is I just happened to get set up the last turn before the last event card came out.
That's why a lot of these tug-of-war games do bother me, but I felt this one was more about the timing and when you're able to get yourself in a good position and then know when that scoring card is going to flip up, which is something you did very nicely. You had you set it up with your last turn
got lucky,
and were able to get the big turn, the last one, and that set you up nicely. So
but I loved the one other thing about the actions is not only did you get those choices, but the event cards that turned over were always fun and interesting effects. So every turn you both got at least one, whoever was going to go first got a choice of a really cool thing, and it was different depending which player you are. So that was cool. I have to say, I mean, I thought that it was really fun turns, and very thematic too. I always felt like, hey, what's happening in this game? This feels like I'm the cops here. I'm like, I'm saving the town from the hoodlums running around,
the corrupt, taking advantage of the people.
There was a cool mechanism too, where I would put these carriages out, and if I didn't protect them enough, Robin Hood's merry men could come in and like rob the carriages. But I could play this little mind game because the carriages, I knew what was in them, but he didn't, and so I could put like a carriage full of like guards and barely any points, so he could still beat him, but he'd have less choice. Or I could put like this royal in the carriage, and that one, if it got to the end, I would get more more order, I'd get more points basically, but if he stole it, he would get more points. So it was a really fun mechanism to kind of put those out there, and I knew it was there, and then Adam had to try and take them from me. A lot of fun stuff going on in this game for a 2-player GMT game. Surprisingly enjoyable in my opinion. So not a perfect hit for me, but pretty solid.
And sorry about the teach there, Tim. I was a sheriff last time, so I knew what you could do. You're right. I should, next time I teach, I say, hey, this is what I can do. Take a look. Man,
well, I think that's the problem, right? Because generally the game isn't that complicated, and so I'm not sure that I would have wanted to sit through 40 minutes of teach. I just needed a little player aid that showed me what your options were. That's all it would have taken.
What was GNT again?
GMT is a company, a publisher, but they tend to make war games mostly, and they're kind of known for making like very poor production quality games, but have like kind of complex war style games. So this was a unique, we talk about them frequently in that I generally don't like them or not really into a lot of what they do. They've definitely done some interesting things, but I think they're kind of not publishing like modern style games.
Okay. I just was making sure I wasn't missing like 4X, or I was like,
close enough.
Okay.
It's basically that type of jargon that we were using. So sorry about that. Sorry, listeners, that we do this sometimes. Thanks for calling us out on that, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that will wrap up this episode, except we're behind. I haven't read any reviews we got on Apple Podcasts. So I'm going to do this really quick. We're running long, guys. I'll keep you for like 2 more seconds here. We have a bunch coming still, but I'm going to read one tonight. This was a review left on Apple Podcasts by Johnny C. out of Great Britain. So one of our British friends. Thank you. They said, wonderful podcast. This podcast has been a sure joy to find and to work through the back catalog. There's gentle humor and humor with a U, by the way. There's gentle humor and ribbing between the 3 main hosts, but they remain respectful of each other's opinions and inputs, and no one is shouting down the others. They definitely make each episode seem like we're listening into an immediate post-game review, but the occasional end credit blooper shows there's a lot of craft, effort, and editing to make each episode sparkle and bring clarity to the games in question. The format is so straightforward, I now find myself evaluating my first plays of games in the same way. Mechanics, theme, production, highlights, would I play again, and overall view. Plus some excellent single topic shows in the top 5-10 lists, which are a great way to get through a bunch of games inside an hour. Finally, beyond the podcast, the trio formed a growing BGHT community on social media and board game platforms. This sets them apart from the rest. Thank you to Tim, Chris, and Adam. Thank you, Johnny C. Really appreciate that review. And of course, for listening and joining us from across the pond there.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic to hear. Every one of these I'm flabbergasted by, and it's just a pleasure to hear some feedback like that. So thank you so much.
I keep assuming it's just Adam finding like new, profiles and
different usernames, different emails, and then writing in pretending I'm from a different country. I took a lot of work to put that U and humor right there to make it look legit.
You should put that much work into the actual podcast recordings. I don't know. Just kidding. That's just some of my humor with the U. All right. Thanks everybody for listening and joining us this week. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.